Music Podcast. Today we're doing Pearl Jam, so grab your flannel jackets and get on that scaffolding, because today we're doing 10.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, sir.
Okay. Welcome to the second episode of our podcast, Spoken Music Podcast. Today we're talking about Pearl Jam's 10.
Fantastic record.
Yeah, we've been listening to it for the past week or so, getting ourselves ready for this episode, so where should we start? I guess the history of the band, probably.
Yeah, a little bit of what we know.
Yeah. I'll go on Spotify, or not Spotify, I'll go on the internet and make sure I'm getting all the names right of the band members on this album.
Absolutely.
I think off the top of my head, we could probably do a couple though.
Oh,
So,
100%.
Obviously, Eddie Vedder, the lead singer, is of Pearl Jam still.
Yep.
And then you have the rhythm guitar player Stone Gossard, Mike McCready on lead guitars, and Jeff Ament on bass. And then I think on this album,
There's a number of drummers who've been in Pearl Jam, but I think on this album it was Dave Cruzen.
maybe? I think so. I think you might be right about that.
I believe so.
Because after this, they changed drummers to Dave Abruzzi, same name guy.
Actually, I think it was Matt Cameron first. I think it was Matt Cameron, then Abrazizi.
Cameron's after.
Is Cameron after?
Yeah, because Cameron's in Soundgarden.
Yeah, he is in Soundgarden.
You should know that. You got a shirt on and everything.
Hey, the man was busy drumming for all the legends.
Yeah, exactly. Now he's in Pearl Jam though.
Yeah.
Matt Cameron is now. I think you're right about his name being Dave Cruzen. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
There you go. Okay, cool. So yeah, he's on the drums in that. Who's the album produced by? So it's 1991 that this one came out. It's produced by Rick Parashar. Parashar, I think that's how you say it. Yeah. And Pearl Jam themselves. So brief history of Pearl Jam, I guess. They're from Seattle, obviously. Seattle, Washington. In 1990 they formed. It was
Very interesting though, because they had to recruit Eddie Vedder out of California.
Yeah.
He was a surfer guy. Back in the day, they called him Crazy Eddie.
Yeah. And they also had... So basically, Pearl Jam has an interesting story. Some of the members came from early on grunge bands, very early grunge scene before grunge even hit the charts or anything. They Stone and Jeff, I believe, started in Green River. And then from there, they moved on to Mother Love Bone.
Yep.
With Andrew Wood, who he's known in the grunge scene for dying of a heroin overdose. That affected the grunge scene and all the people in it heavily. And then all the members of Pearl Jam were basically in Temple of the Dog, besides the drummer on this album. They were all in Temple of the Dog, which was Chris Cornell's band. It was tribute to Andrew Wood back in the day. And then from there, some of the members, besides Chris Cornell and Matt Cameron, obviously, who were in Soundgarden, they decided to start their own band, Pearl Jam, and had Eddie Vedder and stuff.
Yeah, they had received some of Eddie Vedder's demo tapes, and he was recommended from a few people in the scene.
Yeah,
and
he was working at a convenience store in the desert or something, not in the desert.
In California.
Yeah, in California. Yeah.
And they flew him out to Seattle like that.
Yeah.
And Pearl Jam, powerhouse of a band, and a band that I love a lot.
Yeah.
They got me through a lot of high school, and much like how Eddie Vedder was a big surfer guy, I was a big longboarder. I live in a really small town, and I used to spend a lot of my summers listening to Pearl Jam, just riding my board throughout the little town I live in.
Mm-hmm.
Great memories.
Is that the first time you heard Pearl Jam was around that time?
I can't remember the first time I heard them, because they definitely were on our local radio station. Still, our local rock radio will play Pearl Jam from then until forever.
Yeah.
So I heard a few of their songs through then, but yeah, it wasn't until high school, not until grade 11, where I sat down and I listened to 10 all the way through, and I spent a long time listening to it.
Yeah, I also remember hearing the songs on the radio all the time, but then I think it was probably grade 9 when I found 10 and listened to 10 for the first time, and got really into it after that. And then after that, I also checked out Versus, which is their follow-up to this, which is also fantastic in its own right, too. A lot different, a lot more raw.
something else interesting is, have you ever heard why Pearl Jam named their first album 10?
Yeah.
You ever hear the trivia on that?
Yeah, you go ahead and tell it.
Yeah, so the trivia there was Pearl Jam initially wasn't actually going to be named Pearl Jam. They were going to just name themselves after this NBA player that they all liked.
Yeah, his name was Mookie something.
Yeah, it was Mookie...
Reynolds or something like that.
I don't even actually know his last name. Like, sorry, we're not professionals, but yeah, he was this NBA player that they were gonna name themselves after, and his jersey number was 10. So they decided in order to like carry on that little bit of legacy, they were gonna name their album 10.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that's actually fascinating to my understanding about Pearl Jam is, to this day, there's not one definitive confirmed story on why Pearl Jam is named Pearl Jam. There are
there's speculation.
there are 3 major speculative reasons on why Pearl Jam is named Pearl Jam, and I'll start with the one that was already debunked, but it was the most popularly believed in the 90s. There was this story that Eddie Vedder talked about with his grandma, and his grandma's name was Pearl, and she apparently used to make this psychohallucinogenic substance out of mushrooms, and it was this kind of jam. So it was Pearl's Jam, and that was the initial reason that people thought that they named themselves Pearl Jam.
I don't think I've heard that story before.
It wasn't until much later on, and this one was confirmed debunked by Eddie Vedder, who at some point in the mid-2000s confirmed that story was actually just a load of shit.
Okay,
But
yeah.
he gave it off in an interview in the early 90s as one of the early meetings behind the name.
That's pretty funny. And then
Do you know one of the other ones?
Well, I know that there's one that is a bodily function.
Bodily function. If you take the name and you break it down, Pearl is white and
Jam. Sometimes you can put on your toast. Sometimes other things, I guess.
sometimes it's a function.
And then I don't know any other ones really from there.
In the last one, which I also don't believe is true, but they said that it was actually just a very spur of the moment thing that they came up with when the entire band was at a dinner. The guy literally just said like Pearl Jam, and I think they were at like some fancy restaurant and they had seen pearls or something like that, and he literally just said Pearl Jam. He spurted it out, and then the band just decided to stick with that.
Yeah.
Now
You can see it. It's a little
Now,
random,
Eddie,
but...
if you watch this podcast, please let me know what is the real
Us
story
in
behind
particular, out of
Pearl
anyone.
Jam.
Yeah, let us know.
Because we would love to know.
But yeah, other than that, like our history of the band, we've known this band for a long time. Easily one of my favorites, but it's just particularly because of 10 and Versus as well. Everything afterwards, I like a lot off Vitology as well.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and after that, I just never really dug into their catalog that much. Similar to our first episode of Third Eye Blind, where I just never really got farther into Pearl Jam's discography from here and Versus. So, but I should maybe, you know.
Hey, and this time around, I think you might know a little bit more about later Pearl Jam than I do.
Possibly, yeah. There's like Sirens and stuff. That song Sirens,
Yeah.
is pretty cool. Yeah, but well, I guess we'll just go track by track from here.
So. Absolutely.
Okay, so the first track, the opener. So basically, the album opens with this like bookending little intro, and it's called Master/Slave, and it's this really cool like groovy psychedelic little instrumental thing with a couple like vocals from Eddie, just like, you know, saying
Just kind of ominous in the background.
yeah, exactly, and just kind of using his oh, you know, operatic like yells. It's pretty cool. I like it quite a bit, especially for the beginning of the album.
Yeah, me too. And a little known fact is apparently it was the producer of the album who came up with that idea to bookend the album in such a way.
Yeah, and it's a good idea too because it definitely suits the album. Like, it's a perfect way to start the album and also end it. But I also have more to say after that when we get towards the end of the album, more about that. But the first song that it leads into is called Once. Fantastic opener to an album.
Fantastic.
Yeah, honestly, perfect opener to this album.
One of the most powerful tracks on the whole record, for sure.
Sets a good jive, sets a really hard-hitting jive. It's one of the heavier tracks on the record, which is good for this album. You know, starts off with a bang. Yeah, not really much else to say about it. Just a really good, cool track.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And it actually reminds me, recently I watched the movie Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
The vintage one from like the 70s.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Robert De Niro.
And I kind of noticed that there's like a decent amount of parallels between what Pearl Jam talks about in Once and kind of the plot of that movie, and I'm almost wondering if maybe there was somehow some inspiration at some point, because they both talk about that sense of like losing control and that descent into madness, and they both kind of talk about slipping from their like normal life a little slowly, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I think the one line in the song that really kind of brought it all together is try and mimic what's insane.
Yeah, I love that lyric.
Because that just makes me think of the scene with De Niro when he's like, "Oh, are you talking to me?" And he's kind of like losing it a little, and I think he's aware he's losing it, and that kind of gave me that same vibe, like trying to mimic what's insane.
Yeah.
And he like loads up on the guns, and he's got them all buried under his clothes. I seen such a parallel there, and I thought like that is fascinating.
Absolutely, honestly, that's actually a pretty good connection there. I don't know if he had any inspiration from it, but I could see it.
Yeah. Speculation, but I could see it.
And then after Once, it goes right into Even Flow.
Even Flow, debatably their most famous song. One of them at least.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Up there with
one.
Jeremy, which is also off this album. Yeah, this song is kind of built in a certain format where it like has a poppy element to it. Like I really love it in the chorus with the background vocals that really fill out Eddie's voice in that. When he's saying, you know, like Even Flow, you can hear the yelling in the background and like the ominous, you know, echoes in the background. I really like that about the song. I think that's really cool. And then it just has a fantastic like classic riff.
100%.
Yeah.
And just like you're saying with the backing vocals, I also like how there's a lot of background noodling guitar work to really fill it out too. There's layers there.
Oh yeah. That's probably McCready's doing.
It's very nice. The whole sound is super pleasing in stereo. They also, for anyone who's a musician out there, they actually change up the tuning on this track, and they drop that string down to a D to give it that really like crunchy feel too.
I actually think that one of the guitar players are playing an open D as well. One of them's playing a drop D, one of them's playing an open D.
I would definitely believe it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, one of the best tracks as well, honestly.
100%.
It has been played so many times throughout my life. I've heard it so many times. So there's more tracks on this album that I actually prefer, but it definitely is still like keeping up with the jive of the album, still having the flow go well. So
I would go as far as to say the same. And then Even Flow kind of also keeps that vaguely socio-political theme of the album going too, where the topic at hand in Even Flow is about this war veteran actually, and how just he's kind of horribly treated and kind of forgotten about by his community and his system when he returns home. He's like sleeping on like benches in bus shelters, and he's living off of scraps, and nobody seems to really care. And they talk about the legal halls of justice and how just nobody, whether it be his fellow man or the system, can seem to help this guy. And apparently it was based off of a real story, based off a real guy that the members of Pearl Jam knew, who hung out around Seattle in the 90s. So very, very insightful writing, in my opinion. I thought that was very cool.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just about some random homeless man, but, you know, yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know they actually knew the guy. Interesting. And then from Even Flow, it goes right into Alive. Third track. So, you have a lot to say about this one, right?
Alive might be my favorite Pearl Jam song of all time.
Yeah.
As basic as that might sound, as much radio play as it gets, it really is fantastic, and it's truly an anthem for the band.
But the fact that it gets so much airplay and stuff, that just shows more that it's as good of a song as it actually is. You know, it deserves its recognition. So I like that about the song. It's got a lot of recognition. Again, one of their biggest songs, one of their big hits. I have a lot I like about this song, honestly, too. Especially listening to it a lot this week. like building up to this podcast, I definitely think that like certain elements of this song are used so perfectly. The fretless bass,
Yup.
it sounds so good with the riff.
Give it so much depth. The whole track
Yeah.
feels so big.
And it's always moving with that, you know. The fretless bass is always having that woo, you know, that loopy kind of sound. I love that. And then like at the early parts of the song, it has the stunted chords where it's like, like in the far background, you can hear the acoustics doing stuff like that. I love that about the song as well. Obviously, the McCready solo too in that song is just
absolutely killer.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic solo. Eddie Vedder's vocals are fantastic. I think another thing I like about this song too is the chorus isn't super, you know, like when he's singing his line in the chorus, it's only really Eddie singing it. There's no really background vocals. It gives him a lot of space to use his own voice, which I think is awesome. You know, I think that actually gets used quite a bit on this album. Like I was saying earlier with the Even Flow, on that chorus, it sounds so big because there's so many echoing voices in the background and background vocals going around. With this song, it's just kind of Eddie, with maybe a couple little overdubs and stuff. It just sounds so clean with that, and like.
And it makes
really
it feel intimate. You feel very close, and that's
Absolutely,
because Alive is such an intimate song.
Mm-hmm.
Alive was written by Eddie Vedder, one of his earlier songs he wrote, and a very personal song to him too, because the lyrics off that is based off of his life. He's writing about his own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When Eddie Vedder was young, basically his mom remarried, and Eddie Vedder grew up to know his stepdad to be his real dad.
Yep.
And one day his mom basically told him, like, this person that you thought was your dad isn't actually your dad, and your real dad just passed away. And that's, you know, what he talks about in the song, and basically that's not fiction. Like, that really happened.
Mm-hmm. There are parts of the song that are fictionalized
100%.
because the song ends up going into a point where the mother, because of the characters in the song who's like singing, like the appearance of it is so close to the father that they start an incestuous relationship.
That's speculatory. That's not explicitly said in the lyrics of the song.
It makes sense with the lyricism.
It would make sense.
Yeah, and that's how I've seen it. But yeah.
For sure. Well, the way that I've actually interpreted that part is that the mother is so guilt-ridden over all the deceit that she's actually just thinking about killing herself. And she doesn't want to be around anymore either. And it's about the son kind of being like, well, like, hey, like, you're still alive, like, too. Like, don't feel that guilty over the whole thing. Like, you know, it's heartbreaking, but that's not the way out. So it is interesting. There's definitely still layers of interpretation there, but yeah, the foundation of this song is based off of reality, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a messed up story. He actually, Eddie Vedder, talked about it on Howard Stern, and I watched that interview, and he was saying that, like, his real father was actually a family friend. Like, his mom, or, like, any family gathering, he would be there, but he was a family friend, not considered Eddie's father, so he had no idea.
Yep.
Until, eventually, I think, when he died.
And it was too late.
Yeah, so, very intense concept for a song, and very unfortunate for Eddie, but it turns into a beautiful song, you know, that turned it into something amazing. You know?
Absolutely. And another thing I've heard Eddie Vedder talk about with this song is how he grew a strange appreciation for the song. Back in the early touring days, it used to be a really heartbreaking and hard song for him to sing on stage.
Yeah.
And he talks about almost like the magic of how uplifting the energy of the crowd can be, and after enough times of hearing the crowd chant back the chorus to him, it actually gave the song kind of an uplifting turn to him, and now he can use it as a cathartic release.
Yeah.
And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. What a very cool evolution for a song. And I feel the same way, and for my own, like, personal reasons in my own personal life, I carry a lot of relation to what he talks about in Alive.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard.
Absolutely. And I fully agree, honestly. This song has definitely, like, raised its place in my placement of this album. You know, it's one of my favorites, honestly, at this point, too. And then, right after that, it leads into Why Go. That song is a killer track that, honestly, I did not appreciate as much as I do now when I first heard the record. If anything, I used to think of it as a filler a bit, surprisingly. Yeah. Now, it's an amazing song. Starts off with that awesome drum intro that's like filled
Just
with
catches
reverb.
you right
Oh, yeah.
away.
That's another thing about this album too. This album is like pretty drenched in reverb. You know, it is a very
is.
reverb heavy album.
So if
Not-
you're into that,
Yeah, well, especially, but like it doesn't really do any damage to it. I don't feel. I feel like it just raises it. There's actually a mix of this album that Brendan O'Brien did, who was their producer for albums after this. I'm not sure everyone, but a lot of albums after this. Brendan O'Brien's one of the biggest producers, especially in the 90s. And he did a mix of this album that I actually don't like as much because he took out
cut
so much reverb.
a lot of it.
Yeah,
I've
cut
heard
out a lot
it
of
too.
reverb. Yeah, and it's just I much prefer the original version of it.
Me too.
You know, but it's that reverb just makes it sound so big. You know, makes it sound grander than life, really.
By the way, to each his own, reverb or not reverb, fantastic album.
Yeah, and Wygo's got pretty cool, you know, just guitar work as well. The riff is also fantastic.
Absolutely.
And the bass work and everything. Not much else to say about it from there for me.
I agree, and Eddie Vedder's vocals are very nice in this one too. He's very aggressive in tonality in this one. The tone is aggressive, and the message is aggressive, and it kind of also stays on the socio-political side of the things too. I think this album is incredibly socio-political.
Definitely. Yeah, this is about a girl who is forced against her will, into a mental institution.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, which is really cool because this is actually a sequel song to, Leash, off of their next record, Versus, which is one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs, is a sequel to this song.
Yep.
Which is really cool.
Prequel sequel.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another thing too is that I actually forgot to bring that up. Once Alive and the song Footsteps, which is a B-side off this, or just an outtake from this album, they're a trilogy of songs as well.
Yep.
That follow a story, which is really cool. So, a couple connections there.
And I like that element, especially with this album, and as it leads into the other albums, and just with Pearl Jam, how they're able to kind of write songs with such socio-political meanings, and also pretty universal meanings that like a lot of people can see the idea of, but also be able to tell a story with it, like almost like a character-driven story. Very cool viewpoint, and it kind of differentiates them from a lot of other bands that were doing political things at the time.
Yeah, it makes them a lot more different, and I like that. But yeah, and then from there, the song literally sucks itself up into Black. And now Black is, again, another peak of this album. Very well-known song, but just a beautiful song. One of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
I love how Why Go sucks right into it. It kind of ends Why Go with that heavy, and then goes right into that like sunken guitar in the background, and kind of just like very, very like treble-y.
Another riff that just grabs you right away. Just
Yeah,
tickles
exactly.
the ear.
And it's just a beautiful I don't really know the concept. It's probably just like a hectic relationship breakup that he went through. Or something like that.
It's just one of Eddie Vedder's relationships in particular, and I'll spare the details of all that.
Yeah.
But I think what makes Black one of the most magical songs on the record is his lyricism in this. And this song actually takes a break from the socio-political, which is funny, I was just talking about. This song, why it's so magical is because it is pure, unbridled vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really heard many songs where somebody sings from their own vantage point, and they sing in such an intimate and vulnerable way, where you really, really feel the ins and outs of their brain and their sympathy and how their emotions are working.
Yeah.
You really... He paints a picture, and you can really understand how Eddie must have been feeling when he wrote it. And I think to a degree, almost anybody has been through some level of heartbreak.
Absolutely.
Where they can take what he's saying and be like, wow, like, I feel that.
Yeah.
And to put it down so eloquently. It's that emotional vulnerability that makes Black such an incredible song, in my
agree.
opinion.
Oh, I fully agree with that. Earlier today when I was taking notes and just jotting down some things before we did our podcast, I was taking down notes for each song. But once I got to Black, I just got enveloped in the song, wasn't able to really put anything down. Because it just, the song honestly speaks more than words. And it's one of those songs off the album. Actually, most songs of the album explode into something so grand near the end of the song. Honestly, almost every song does. But this song in particular, with the crazy vocal lines, the melodies that are going on, and it's just insane. One of the most crazy songs I've ever heard. I love it.
100%.
Yeah. And then from there, it goes into probably Pearl Jam's biggest song, Jeremy.
Yeah, debatably the biggest too, right up there with all their other hits.
Yeah, with Even Flow and stuff. So this song is, this song might be my, this is the song I look at that I think that this is their peak of songwriting. At least for instrumental wise and just all the overdubs and layering and everything like that. The song just has such a huge sound to it for a rock song, and the concept is insane. It's about the kid. Jeremy read about it, and Eddie Vedder read about a kid in the paper who shot himself in front of his classroom due to neglect at home and stuff like that.
Yeah, and being bullied, being a social outcast.
Yeah, and that's just an incredible meaning. And again, it's a beautiful song as well, with a lot more of a harder tone. It's a heavier song.
Yeah, it's a very dramatic jump from Black.
Yeah, exactly. But it still, keeps a nice pace going along as it goes. There's actually something I noticed in Jeremy today that I'm not the biggest fan of. I guess it's from a production standpoint. It just caught my ear, and from there I could not get rid of it out of my head. There's just this certain tapping. I don't even know what it is. Just some sort of percussion element in the song that's going on in your right ear while you're listening to it, and it's this weird tapping that I just can't get my ears off of. So for that, I just for some reason can't click with the song right now because of that. It's stuck in my head, that little tapping that I just don't like production wise.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but
absolutely, because I just noticed it today after 10 years of listening to the album. Just happened to notice it today, and I was like, I don't really like that.
Yeah, which is very unfortunate.
But again, that doesn't take away from the instrumental itself 100%. And everything else of the song.
I agree. It's a super well-composed song, and it's like we were saying, Pearl Jam has so much of that, especially throughout this album, of just layers and very, interesting musical motifs happening that, unfortunately maybe not all of them click, and who knows, maybe the producers they decided that they did like it. Who knows, right?
Oh yeah, this song is huge, so it's just me probably making a fuss out of something that's not even that bad. But again, though, it's still one of my favorite songs of all time, honestly. And I still stand by the fact that I think that this is one of their strongest points of music, creativity and everything.
I agree.
Again, the vocals are insane on this song.
Absolutely.
That goes for every song, but for some reason, this song just really catches your ear. His vocal lines and certain melody lines. I really like the what does he say when he sang King Jeremy? The King Jeremy, the wicked. What a great melody line that's just stuck in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love so much about this song.
And that song, I think, really lends itself well to we were saying, that idea of so much reverb.
Mm-hmm.
Because Eddie Vedder's vocals on this are so big, and that reverb just helps, and it makes it feel like he's taking an empty room and just filling it with his voice, which is exactly what the song calls for. Precisely what the song calls for.
Exactly.
It fits so well.
Yeah.
And Jeremy also leads heavily right back into socio-political, right back into social politics with this song, and Jeremy's debatably the most one of the most political songs of all time, at least if you're anybody who's especially in the United States and still in North America or any other country that has gun control issues.
Yep.
No matter what side of that fence you sit on, I'm sure everyone agrees that events like that are a tragedy.
Absolutely.
And It was written about in the 90s. It's happened in the 2000s. It's been in the teens. We've had it in the 2020s. Issues like this have been happening for decades and decades and decades, and a song like that is still just as relevant today. And it's just as sad today. No matter what side of gun control you're on, people who feel the need to do that they're sick. And it's very sad that our society is still unable to do more to help out with that kind of thing, and that people still feel that neglected or that alienated from the rest of their peers, from the rest of their family, from society as a whole. It's very tragic.
Yeah, and I think that this song actually stands another point too, where the article that he read about in his newspaper was not a headline article.
Yep.
It was a small thing in the corner of the page that you kind of had to look close to read. You know, it was not something that was a big thing, and it wasn't, you know, looked upon enough. You know, it wasn't noticed as much as it should have been. I think that definitely nowadays it has that kind of thing.
More mainstream attention.
Absolutely, it does have a lot more attention. But at this time, you know, that affected Eddie Vedder, and he thought to write a song about it, and comes out very strong, very strong. And it's an
100%.
important song too. So maybe it's one of the best in their catalog. Yeah,
Definitely. Very moving.
yeah.
Beautiful song.
And then from Jeremy, it goes into Oceans. This song is very trippy.
It is.
Yeah, this song has it's a softer song. It doesn't really have much heavy elements to it like most of the songs in this album. But it's very trippy. The lyrics are very psychedelic. The funny thing about it is, I believe, this might be speculation as well, but I believe Eddie Vedder wrote this about his surfboard.
I also believe that. I think it might be speculation as well, but I was thinking the exact same thing.
I can see it. I mean, like, it's just a funny little topic for a song, and, like, you wouldn't think it right away from the lyrics how, intense they are, but he was just goofing around. I'm sure it was just about a surfboard or something like that.
I think it's 100%
parts.
in his nature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a funny song, but it's beautiful.
It is.
It's a really cool part of the album too, because this is basically midpoint
Yep.
in the album. This is right in the middle here, where it just like kind of settles down. It's kind of a
After so many power tracks just hitting you,
yeah,
it gives you a little bit of time to breathe. It gives the band that second to breathe and just let the room air out.
yeah, and yet still carries the jive with it
does.
as well. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, in that it leads into Porch,
Yeah.
and that song is one of the most insane songs on the album.
Another contender for my favorite on the album is Porch, for sure.
Honestly, mine as well. I love this song.
And something else that's interesting too, another bit of trivia is, although Porch is only around the middle point of the studio album, all the time during their live gigs, Pearl Jam would famously end their concerts with Porch, and they would extend it by a number of minutes. And Eddie Vedder would always be freaking out, and he'd have some sort of stage stunt to do, whether it be a dive or some ad-lib lyrics.
Yeah,
Or
there's
what
some pretty
have
wild
you.
ones. Yeah.
And he would always make a scene out of Porch in particular, and it was such a powerful ending to the shows.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it should have been the actual ending to the studio album. I'm okay with how it ends, but I absolutely adore Porch.
Yeah.
Porch is incredible.
Do you think it is your favorite?
I'd say it's hard to even answer what my favorite one is. Maybe
This and Alive.
maybe closer to the end of the podcast, I'll try to give a definitive answer on that. But I will
Sure.
definitely say that I hold Porch in very high regard on the album.
Yeah. Let me see my notes here. Let's take a look. I do think that Porch has really great production, especially on this for this album. Like, just really hard hitting, and
Oh yeah.
you know, vocally it's insane. Let's see, what else did I... Oh yes, I also think that it's pretty funny that oh, that's not even the right song. I was looking at the wrong song, never mind. I think that's it I have to say about Porch then.
All right.
I already answered all my things.
I think I got one last point to make about Porch.
Yeah.
Although it might not be my favorite song on the album, another thing I'd like to highlight about Porch is it might have one of my favorite lyrical passages on the album. There's this point closer to the end of the song where Eddie says, to know that I would not ever touch you, hold you, feel you in my arms ever again. I think that is such a cool lyric in the middle of that song, and the whole idea of it being called Porch.
Yeah.
Like, you get the visual for it, you get the feel for it. It's another classic example of Eddie being able to really put you in a scene with how his lyricism is.
Yeah.
Great lyrics.
Yeah.
Underrated lyrics on the album, in my opinion.
I agree. I think genuinely it's an underrated song anyways.
100%.
But yeah. And then after Porch, that leads into Garden.
Garden.
Hmm.
Another fantastic song.
Yeah, eh? I think that Garden is a good song too. I think that I guess the album cut out or something. Oh, we'll get a phone call, but we'll wait for now. I think that Garden, listening to it the last couple, because it used to be, again, this was one of the tracks where I was like, like kind of where Why Go was, where I was like, just maybe a little bit less up on my favorites, but over time and over this last week of, really digging in depth with the album and just putting all my attention towards it, this is definitely one of the highlights of the album.
I'm in 100% the same boat as you. I think I overlooked Garden a lot in the past.
Yeah.
But it's a powerhouse. It's a firm song on the album, and I'm a big fan of it. In particular, in this one, a change up, instead of constantly babbling on about the lyrics, I'm actually a really big fan of the guitar work in this song.
Mm-hmm.
The riffs are very nice. The tones on the guitars are good, and they're just so, like, I don't even know how to describe it. They're not too in your face, but they're like broad at the same time.
Yeah, I actually have it written down here that I think that the solo of the song is incredible.
I agree.
That very echoey, very bluesy feeling. Like Mike McCready is, I'm pretty sure, heavily influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan. And,
I would believe so.
And it definitely shows a lot on this very bluesy solo on this song. But it fits the song really perfectly, and I think that the chorus and everything of the song is just amazing.
Yeah, in general, Mike McCready is a super creative guitarist, and he's probably one of the best that came out of Seattle during the 90s.
Probably.
For sure.
Yeah, honestly. I guess that's all I have to say about Garden. Fantastic song. It's definitely a bit more of a slower paced song, like tempo-wise, it's a bit slower than the last couple tracks, but that doesn't take away from it at all.
Agree.
And then from Garden, it should lead into Deep.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one that I want to talk about. This is the one I was
100%.
getting excited to talk about because this has always been one of my favorites ever since I heard the album, basically, and that hasn't changed. But you think that it's a little bit lesser on it, even still.
I tried very hard to get into it, especially over this past week. And let me preface this with saying I still think that 10 would be a near perfect album. And I just, for the life of me, I think that Deep is the song I connect to the least on the whole record. I wouldn't go as far as to say I think that it's a bad song.
No.
But there's just elements of the song that I just can't seem to fully jive with. I'm not sure exactly what it is.
That's okay, though.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
The lyric, I think it's a case of everything being okay, in my opinion. I don't think Eddie does anything particularly crazy, either lyrically or vocally. Nothing bad. And I think that the rest of the band follows suit. I don't think there's anything crazy going on instrumentally, but again, there's nothing bad. I think it's very much an album track, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. Yeah, I think almost the exact opposite. I think that every performance on this is just like very huge and very grand as well. Keeps up with the jive of the album perfectly. I think it's got great production. I think that the whole ending of the song where it blows up into that big, huge opus, like the climax, is fantastic. Yeah, I think it's a great song. This is also the first time today I noticed that this band and Sum 41 share chorus lyrics in Too Deep. That's pretty funny.
Where was Sum 41 going with that?
They ripped off Pearl Jam. What the hell? How did I not realize this? But yeah, that's a great song. And then from here, we're just getting to it now on the actual album.
Catching
which is
up.
Perfect time, yeah. Release. So this is the final track on the album. This is a pretty interesting song too, because this song is said to have been created by all the people in the band. It's said they're all credited. When every other song is credited to the certain person who composed it, this song had everybody on it. So
A truly collaborative song.
Yeah, I think this was like a jam that they all did, and I'm pretty sure that most of the lyrics that Eddie Vedder made were
On
nearly
the spot.
improvised. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool because this song is, again, a peak for me. This is a contender for my favorite song on the album.
I like this song a lot. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite, but I'd
No.
say it's a very nice ending to the album, and I'd
Oh, yeah.
say, especially for a mostly improv session, it just shows the talent of the people who made this record. It is top tier.
Yeah.
You couldn't ask for some better improvised music.
Yeah, this is incredible. I think that this song has very interesting vocal lines throughout the whole thing, with his droning but it's again very
Someone only like Eddie can make it sound as good as he does.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
incredible.
And people have tried to recreate it many times. We're talking to you, Scott Stapp.
We'll see you on the Creed episode.
But yeah, and I think that the chorus of this song, even though it's not really a chorus, it's just him saying, it's that droning, oh, I think it is perfect.
Absolutely.
Because the chorus, again, sort of like how Black, and in its instrumental sections, and even with its lyrics and stuff, it speaks louder than words can. I think that this song has that element to it as
It's
well.
like conveying that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that as the feeling of Release. I think that's why it's kind of called that.
I think
the album letting you go.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
You've been on this ride and you're being released from this ride now.
I love that. That's a great way to look at it. I think that the song has, with the droning O's and stuff like that, I think that it has elements of, like, Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd, where it's, again, that song speaks louder than words. Words can't be expressed there, so it uses vocal lines, and but it's perfect, let's see here. And yeah, afterwards in the song, I think that the guitars and stuff are fantastic of the song and everything like that. And after the song, it leads back into the intro of the album, which is very interesting. It kind of, I think, a little over 10 seconds goes by after Release ends with its very faint guitar.
And then you kind of hear, like, right where it was in the beginning, kind of
comes back into the beginning, and it does all that again, and then it does more. And it does, this song plays for about, 4 minutes or something like that. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I think that it's drawn out a bit too long near the end here. I think that it's really cool to have this section of the song. I think it's cool sounding. Excuse me, but after 4 minutes of listening to it, it's it just it should have faded out. I think a little bit earlier. I think that that's just one of my main gripes with it, is that it goes on for a little too long. I think it's a really cool song. I think it's very psychedelic. And I didn't know the name until today, so that's cool too. And again, I don't think it takes away from the fact that it bookends the album very well, but I just think that it's a little too long for the ending. Especially because Release is already a decently long song as it is.
It is.
Yeah, and I think that Release is just such a grand ending anyways that it doesn't need to have more after it. It just, a little bookend would have been fine. But
I agree.
Again, that doesn't take away from Release as a track anyways.
The Release as a track is fantastic.
Yeah, unless you want to put it on a playlist or something, because you have to listen to this. You have to listen to the ending part, but that's okay, That's why you just listen to the whole album. Exactly, no playlist for the Release.
It's definitely an album that likes to be listened to as a collective.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it just bookends perfectly, I think, so.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Yeah, and that's 10.
That is 10.
That's the album track by track, at least. In conclusion, yeah, what would you consider your favorite song off the album?
I think being put down on the spot like that, I would definitely still have to say it's Alive.
Right on.
Live is my favorite track on the record. What's yours?
I think that it probably is, I think it might be Jeremy. If that thing today didn't click with me as much as it did, I think that Jeremy would still have the spot. I think that Black is also really up there.
Yeah, Black is also up there for me too.
Again, Release and Deep as well, and Even Flow. Even Flow is really good too. Man, it's pretty hard to make that decision. Oh, I apologize for putting you on the spot like that.
right. Such a strong record.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, what's your knowledge with Versus, like the follow up?
I do know the whole album. I believe. I don't think I could recite it on the spot, but I've listened to the whole record a few times.
Yeah.
It's really good. It feels like the band has a little bit of an evolution.
Mm-hmm. But definitely into a more raw sound.
Yeah. I would just say the production style definitely changes up a bit. They get a new producer for that album, and one of the things I do like a lot about Versus is the lyricism, especially. It really keeps that feel that 10 has. A lot of them are like socio-political songs or songs that are very like intimate and personal from the band, and they still do a great job of painting these pictures and putting you in these scenes. The instrumentation is fantastic too. If anything, some of them have even better instrumentation. I would argue.
Yeah, my favorite Pearl Jam song is probably Leash. I'm not gonna lie. I think Leash is probably my favorite Pearl Jam song. That's just an amazing song. And if anything, it could have fit onto 10 pretty perfectly. I actually will say, I do think that, even though I love Deep, I do think that would be the song that I would take off the album and replace it with something else. Like, at the same time, they were making the song State of Love and Trust.
Yup, State of Love and Trust is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a fantastic song. I think that could have replaced Deep. Even though I love Deep so much, I don't think that any other song on the album could be pulled off as easily.
I agree.
Because everything fits well.
So I think you can at least agree with me in that viewpoint where Deep is kind of the straggler of the group.
And that's only to an extent on my part, but yes, I can agree with that. But yeah, I think that Versus still holds up pretty
100%.
well as well. Maybe one day we'll get to Versus as well.
Hey, if you guys want to see a part 2 on Pearl Jam, let us know. We would be
Please.
happy to review another Pearl Jam album.
Absolutely, yeah, especially Versus. So recommend that, please. But yeah, I guess that's it. I'm basically running out of beer again. So I guess that's it for Pearl Jam's 10, buddy.
Still going strong, but hey, you know what? Pearl Jam's 10, fantastic record. A lot of fantastic memories. I love nothing more than longboarding around my little town listening to 10. That was some peak high school moments for me. And Pearl Jam, truly inspirational band.
Absolutely. Cheers.